watching the Forefront Church video podcast. And wherever you're at viewing online, we just want to say thank you and welcome. And one of the ways that we can help connect with you is we want to hear from you and where you're at and how we can help. And so head over to forefrontchurch.info after the message and click the Connect tab. It's a great way for us to help you along your spiritual journey as you connect with God and learn about Jesus. And so sit back, relax. We hope that you're challenged and encouraged from today's message. Good morning. How's everybody doing? You are just as rowdy as 8:30. I like it. The 8:30 normally is like, we're still waking up, but we're composed. But I was like, whoa, they kind of blew me away. And well, you guys give a big get rowdy for everybody that's watching online. You guys. I will say this. One of the things that's really cool, and now while I'm kind of one of the people, I need the personal interaction. Being able to see your faces, see what's going on, like even though being an introvert, I need that. What's really cool, and I watch this happen from time to time, is in the comments of online, like somebody will jump in and say something, and it was so awesome to see, like somebody jumped in and expressed like they were going through a hard time, and a couple people immediately like, hey, I want to encourage you. Hey, I'm praying for you. Hey, I just sent you a private message, wanted to help out. And so you guys online, thanks for doing what we should do here and continue to do here, and it's just so cool to see. And I just want to say thanks for those of you guys who, when you see a need and you jump to that, it's great. And so technology, whoever says Facebook is all bad, it's not. You guys are great. And so we're thankful for you guys tuning in. We are in our series. This is week 8, y'all. 8. Like, yeah, some of you are like, get this series over already. Week 8. Don't worry, we're getting to self-control next week, so buckle up. Everybody's been like, well, are you saving it for last? Well, one, it's the last one in the list of the verse we've been looking at, and it's the one that is the most difficult for many. Today's, in particular, is the most difficult for me. We're talking about gentleness. And I don't think that God... in his divine providence, I think that God absolutely planned it that my life would look the way that it did to help form me into becoming more and more gentle as I walk through this, because he could have given me 3 boys. And instead, I think it was exactly right that he gave me daughters to be able to help guide me and show me what it means to be gentle. Because that's been something that I haven't always been great at. And honestly, it's a daily thing. If you have that thing for you where you just go, I'm not quite sure I'm there yet, I'm limping along with you in this. But it's been something that God has been opening a door. And so if you've ever felt like, man, gentleness isn't my strong suit, or you may even use the words, I'm not a gentle person. Hopefully we could change some of that today as we've been in this series, Get Over It. When we've been looking at the things that are difficult, the life that we had before God. And for many of you guys, you might still be teetering there. Someone invited you, someone brought you, you're tuning in online, and you are still in a life where you have not made a commitment to God, you have not gotten over the things that are difficult. Not that we will always have difficult things, but there has been a challenge, whether it's God, faith, the divine, Christians, church, that you just go, I'm not quite sure I can follow God quite yet. And our hope over the last 8 weeks and then into week 9 next week is that we can guide one another out of darkness, get over the things that are difficult. That doesn't mean we forget the difficult things, but that we begin healing, and then we move in what's true in the fruit of the Spirit that God has shown us. And it's not fruits of the Spirit. I had somebody come up to me after last service, and they go, well, there's lots of fruits, so you name them all. I go, no, it's fruit, singular. They're like, well, there's a lot of them. I said, but he gives it all in one big bundle. They're like, well, I haven't received gentleness yet. I'm like, no, you did. You just don't choose to use it. In like a nice way. And we'll get into all of that, and that's me not being gentle. And so, again, work in progress. And so we're going to be moving through this. And so if you've ever felt that way, I totally get it. But we are going to be in a Bible passage over in Psalm 23. Psalm 23 is where we're going to be at. And so you can go over here, and in the lobby, you could stop by where they have the big FLU banner, Forefront Life University banner. Make sure you get those initials right, FLU. If you get them out of order, completely different meanings. And so if you're not quite sure, nudge a friend and ask. And so stop by there. Not only can you got that card, amazing classes that will help you as all these things. If you've ever limped along in life in a different part, tons of great classes. One that I'm going to be doing is called ScreenWise. If you're a parent or you work with students, I'm going to be teaching a class. It's a one-time only shot class that looks at how do you help your kids navigate this digital world, and what does that look like? If you've ever been a parent and sat and gone, I'm not quite sure how to help my kids not be addicted to technology, or what that next thing is, and all these pieces. And so there are tons from parenting to divorce care, you name it. Make sure that you check those out. But you could stop by the Get Connected table, pick up a Bible that's there for you free. There's no catch. Or for those of you guys online or you guys here, if you're more digitally inclined, you can go to forefrontchurch.info, swipe over a couple times, click the Notes tab, and everything that we have that we talk about today is right there. And if you keep swiping all the way to the end, there's an add to home screen page. It'll teach you how to add it to your home screen and put a little icon like an app. And we use that all throughout the week to be able to watch messages, Bible studies, small group stuff, you name it. And so make sure you use that. And today, even though we'll be over in Psalm 23, we've been in this same passage for 8 weeks. And I had someone come to me in about week 4 or 5, and they said, hey, why do we keep sitting in this same passage? Like, let's move on. There's lots of verses in the Bible. And like, it's funny when people come and say things to me, and I do my best not to use names, and I won't this time either. But they said like, hey, why are we doing this? I said, cool, so what are those verses? Just stone-faced, deer in headlight, just stop. They're like, if I don't move, maybe he'll forget I'm here. And so I was like, what are the verses? And they're like, I said, well, if it's been one of those things that has been like, oh, we belabored it, then you should be able to tell me what the verses are. And so I said, I don't mean that to be mean. Let's talk about that. I was like, well, maybe memorizing scripture could be one of the best things that we can do. Maybe memorizing these verses are the very things that we can recall when we're dealing with a coworker, or we get into a blow up with our spouse, or our kids are being kids, and we have a run-in with our neighbor, and we have these things, and we're driving home from work, and it's Hampton Roads, and I don't understand why we emphasize the roads, because they're bad. And like we do all that, but we're driving, and things go awry, and we go, in the moment that we want to unleash, that we go, let me be reminded of what's true. Let me be reminded of what God believes about me and my heart and my life. And so we've been over in this passage, Galatians 5, even though you're holding over in Psalm 23. And I'd love for you guys to read it with me, because with repetition, you know this, especially if you've raised kids, or if you've ever taught a class, or even if you're just trying to do things, that after a while it becomes habit. And so let's read it together. But the fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. Just like last week. And we get goodness, faithfulness, self-control. Like everybody gets quiet. Y'all are scared of next week. Don't be scared. It's going to be hopeful, I promise. But that, I tell you what, that gentleness piece, that's difficult. And I learned this all too well the first time. How many of you guys ever had a fish tank? And you guys ever had fish? Yeah, so you know what that hell is like. Yeah. They're like, I don't know why we ever had kids, because I couldn't keep fish alive. I've never been able to keep fish alive. They always die. And before I got married, I had a fish tank, a 10-gallon fish tank. I went to PetSmart, and I went out and I'm picking out all the fish. I'm like, I'm going to have a tropical oasis. And I got all the stuff, put it in there, brought the fish home, and watched them. And what do you do when you have fish? You just sit there. I feel calm. And you just watch them, right? And so I watched them, and I woke up the next morning, and sure enough, one's dead. I'm like, this isn't okay. This is bad. And like the shop has their time, whatever. And so I was like, maybe this is just a fluke. And there were other fish. I'm like, maybe something happened. So next day, go to sleep, wake up, like 3 more fish are dead. We have an epidemic now. And there's all this going on. And so I'm like, this All right, but I still have a lot of fish that are supposed, now before you're like, maybe you put too many fish in, maybe you do whatever. No, I had the proper amount for the tank, okay? And so had that, woke up the next day, all the rest of the fish, belly up. And I'm like, had enough. Bag up the fish and I go to PetSmart. I'm gonna give them a piece of my mind. Walk up to the desk, put it on there. These fish are dead. Guy goes, yep, they're dead. Like, you say things sometimes, and you go through that later on, you get back home, and you're in the mirror, and you're like, I would have said this. And like, it would be awesome, and whatever. But when you get there, you say things, and then you're like, that wasn't the way I thought this was going to go. And he's like, yep, they're dead. And I was like, what happened? So I walk him through the whole thing, and he's like, they're dead because you. Like I start like gentleness is not on my mind right in that moment. And he's like, they're dead because you. I'm like, what are you talking about? He said, well, you did the wrong thing at the very beginning. You see, when I got the tank home, it was dirty because it was on the shelf and it was gross. So I had to clean it. Before you say, oh no, it says on there, Dawn helps save wildlife. It's got a pretty picture of a little ducky. Yeah, ducky. Yeah. And so he then begins to explain to me how it's my fault I killed the fish. He's like, you poisoned them. I was like, I did no such thing. I loved every one of those little guys. No, I didn't say it. And he goes, you washed it with something that was harsh. That's not what you needed. And he begins to explain to me the process that happens. He's like, you did too much, and that's not what and he actually used the verbiage, if you're going to care for an animal that lives in a contained environment, you need to make sure that you handle it with care and that you're more gentle in how you do it. Now, I was in my early 20s. I didn't want to hear anything about being gentle. I'm a man. I'm a man with dead fish. And so I remember going home and going like, okay, well, throw this tank away. And I thought to myself, and I learned my lesson. I've had fish since then, and in much longer time, they were alive than 3 days, and all of that. And I learned my lesson there, but I don't know that I learned my lesson when it came to gentleness in life. You know, isn't that the case for many of us? Gentleness is not something that's very embraced within our culture. Gentleness is looked at as weakness. Oh, you don't need to do that. You need to be strong, especially if you're a man. Well, you need to man up. Yeah, man up. You know, you do it. You know, if you ladies be like, oh, you don't need to do that. You need to be strong. You need to be a boss. You know, you need to put your big girl pants on. You need to handle your business. Well, right? We don't want to show weakness. We're told to be strong. In the words of Cobra Kai, mercy is for the weak. You need to be strong. Some of you guys are binge watching that on YouTube. I know. It's all right. And when it comes to gentleness, I think we can learn a thing or two about what God desires for us and learn from some of the fallacies that have actually been told when it comes to following God and being strong when instead we're called to follow Him. Look, here's what the writer says in Proverbs 15. A gentle answer turns away wrath, but a harsh word stirs up anger. The tongue of the wise adorns knowledge, but the mouth of the fool gushes folly. The eyes of the Lord are everywhere, keeping watch on the wicked and the good. I actually love the way that sometimes the Bible says things that I want to say, and it just says it. Like there's the Message paraphrase, and it talks about if we're not gentle, if we're in anger, if we don't move in knowledge, it says, fools are like leaky faucets dripping nonsense. Now, don't go home, okay? I caution you. And if your spouse, for instance, does something that you don't like, you go, well, God actually calls you a leaky faucet. You nothing but nonsense. All right, there's a good chance that you might not be sleeping under that same roof tonight, okay? Now, but there's a difficulty when we approach things like this that we need to be able to understand that we're called to move in gentleness, but the unfortunate part is our identity has been hijacked. That for far too long, we've come up with a poor understanding of how we're supposed to live and who we are and whose we are. And well, a poorly defined identity avoids gentleness like it's a character flaw. Oh, I'm not going to be gentle. I'm going to be strong. And we look at strength, especially in the manly aspect. Guys, I want to talk to you for a second. We hear the word gentleness, especially, I love that our area has so many military personnel, first responders. I mean, we have quite a few amazing men and women who are a part of that community. But within that community, strength is talked about, and you put on a game face, you go to work, you do what you need to do. All right? I meet a lot of guys that are in construction and work in architecture and things, and got to be strong, got to take care of business, got to do whatever. And we think that somehow, we've been told along the way, that masculinity is defined by wearing a jersey, shooting a gun, and grunting like Tim the Toolman Taylor, and just building things. Now, I'm not saying those things aren't masculine, but I've met plenty of women who could build circles around some guys. Okay? I'm also not suggesting at all that we shift masculinity to be frolicking through a field with rainbows behind us, with a bluebird on my shoulder, and just, singing show tunes either. All right? Now, if that's your thing, then run with that. But we don't want to swing the pendulum these ways and negate what God says is true. You see, because gentleness and strength are a movement of God that can happen within a female and a male. And so as we look at these character things, I love the way that Mike Foster, amazing author and speaker, and he put it this way in his book. He says, identity is the engine that drives the relationship not only with ourselves, but also with God and others. If your identity is broken, your life is broken. If you define it incorrectly, it will carry that wrong definition into your story. That as you engage life and you have a wrong, broken identity about what it means to be strong and practice gentleness, your engine is broken. If it doesn't start with Jesus, it's not going to end well. You have to open up the hood, allow God to come in and rewire some things and do the work. And if you get in there and try to do it yourself, sometimes it's going to mess things up. Sometimes it's not going to go the way you intended. Brandon Davis, our creative arts pastor, on his Insta story yesterday, he posted that he was working on his car. And I was like, man, good for Brandon. Good for all 80 pounds of Brandon getting under his car. And I was like, he could have paid to have somebody do it, but he got underneath there. And then the next part of his Insta story is like, oh, didn't have the right tool for this. But then he did a post. He's like, I went to my neighbor, got the right tool. And I go, man, that is a great example of when we decide to move in our own strength and think we know the picture of gentleness. And Brandon realized, he's like, I'm not going to get that finished unless I have the right tool. And I need to go to somebody that has that, so I'm able to do it. And he's able to fix it, able to take care of it. And it's the same way with God, that we are in dire need of repair and we cannot do it on our own. And I hope if you don't get anything else, that you get this. And that is that gentleness is strength in action. Gentleness is strength in action. You might go, wait a second. Gentleness and strength are at odds. That's what we've been told, or at least conditioned to look at. And I would actually say to the contrary, that the most strong that you can be is when you are able to show, exude, and practice gentleness. You see, not every situation means that you come in kicking in the door into it. Actually, more often than not, the situations that we encounter, it's often a time where we're in a hostage negotiation situation for your heart and mine, and we're taking time to talk it through and work it out and get to the end. Even though we have everything at our disposal to break the door down, we choose not to. That is what strength is. That even though you have the power to move forward, that you can dial that back and go, I have, next week, self-control. And I know when to use this strength in the right manner. But far too often, people can't do this because they're tired. They're weary. They're exhausted. They just go, man, that's why you'll see people posting the memes. Oh, man, I'm in my 30s and now it's totally different. I thought I was feeling more like in my 20s, then I hung out with 20-year-olds. Nope, I'm 30. You see that, and as you get older, you're like, man, I'm tired. Life beat me down. Things are going on and on. I think spiritually, as I watch the landscape of individuals, that people are weary. And so they're not able to move in strength. And when you're tired, you're not patient with people. When you're weary, you don't sit there and go, now let me ponder this for a moment before I respond. No, if you're tired and then a situation happens, if you're weary and a thing pops up, what do? Like you freak out on people. People are like, whoa, sorry. Unfollow you on Facebook. You're just like, they're like, I'm not going to deal with it. You're in a different field. Something's going on. And when you're weary, you are not able to do this properly, to function in gentleness. That's why I love the way that Pastor John Gray puts it. He says, please take time to refresh yourself. When you're weary, you make what? Ungodly decisions. You don't honor God. When you are tired, you are not able to move in the gentleness that God has called you to do. Now, if you're new here and you're like, you haven't made a decision for God and you're still kind of exploring this, and you go, man, this looks good, but I'm not quite sure. Even if you take God out of the equation, you can see that the situations that have happened in your life have led you to a place where you're not responding the way that you should and something has to change. You see, here at Forefront, we would contend that not only are there aspects that need to shift and need to change, but that there is a spiritual, divine intervention that needs to happen and take place for you to become the man or the woman that God designed you to be. And that is getting over ourselves and the things that have happened and moving in how God designed us to watch that love, that joy, that peace, that kindness, that gentleness to take place. And there's some things that I have learned along the way. I'm going to talk about 4 of them, and I call this the roadmap to weariness. And I hear people all the time, hey, how you doing, man? Whew, I'm just tired. I'm like, you got 45 kids. I know why you're tired. Like, man, my boss beat me down. Man, whatever, I had this, my marriage is struggling right now. Man, there are all kinds of factors that take place. I want to contend that the way that you're handling those situations are not because of the situations themselves. This is coming from someone who has not moved in gentleness in the way that I should, and I've learned over time. My wife has been amazingly helpful in pointing me back to God and helping me note the things that are doing. And there's some factors that happen. Some of these might not sound spiritual, but every single one of them are rooted in what God wants for you and I. And the first one is sleep. Sleep is a very spiritual thing. I tell people all the time, some of the most spiritual thing you can do is go take a nap. Now, don't use that today to get out of whatever you're supposed to do. Be like, Jason told me I need to be spiritual. I need to go home, take a nap. It might not go well for you. Again, caution you, sleeping outside, it's supposed to rain, bad idea. But God, over and over again, points the men and women that follow him to take a time of rest. Jesus, every single time along the way, as he is encountering men and women and helping them and moving through their lives and sharing with them, that he would always stop and take a time to pause. To be what? Still. To be still. And for many of us, and I know why we can't do it, because we have more computing power in our pocket than what sent men and women to the moon. And then we have, some of you are binge watching Netflix shows that you don't even care about. You're just like, I pay for Netflix and I have it, so I got to watch it all. Documentary. And like, you're just, whew, pump the brakes. You're going to be okay. Eat a cheeseburger. Have a smile. Move along. You can have stuff. You don't need a 40 square foot house with salad, okay? No matter what, how many documentaries tell you. Meet all these people. I'm moving in a tiny house. I'm not eating anything but carrots. All right, have fun with that. But we do. We have all this stuff, and so we got to go. We have all the cable channels, and they're going 24/7. How many of you guys remember a time where TV stopped at night? How many of you guys remember that, right? And all of a sudden, American flag, dun, 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 it'd be up there. Yeah, and it was black and white. You're like, oh, time to go to bed. Now you're just like, I don't even know what we have on here. I got to find more channels. You can't sleep. Take some time. There's plenty of ways that you can condition that, but that will lead eventually to weariness. Second one is margin. Lack of saying no within your schedule too much. Now I know the pushback on this. Jason, I just have a lot going on. Okay, you do. Jason, there's just a lot of things happening. You do. let me share something with you. It's your fault. It's your fault. No, Jason, you don't understand. My kids have to be, they're in basketball, they're in dance, they're in ballet, they're in underwater basket weaving, they're in all this stuff. They just gotta. There's no way they're gonna get into college unless they have 45 different activities and all this stuff. No, they're gonna get into college. They're gonna be just fine. Actually, it might be a good chance in our current culture that they don't go to college. Go to a trade school, go do whatever. Can't do that, got to do all this stuff. Yeah, all right, whatever. They can make more money and they're gonna sit, and they may have a great degree. Would you like fries with that? And so, tell me I'm wrong. And they move on. No margin. You're like, my job is so busy. My job has me going all over the place, whatever. Well, who chose that job? Well, Jason, we have this house that we got for, whatever. Well, is the house what you need, or is the house what you want? Now, I'm not shaming anybody. You can have all the things in the world, but our margin usually gets determined by our lifestyle. And we choose a lifestyle and we want to run that direction. I would just say the reason if you don't have margin is you. And I know because I watch in every single person I counsel, including the one I have to look back into the mirror to. It's my fault too, that I don't have enough margin. It's why we don't do 1,000 activities here. People are like, we need to start this ministry, we need to start that ministry. I'm like, nope, we're good. We're good with exactly what we're doing. Well, we need to have well, how are we going to function if we don't have an official men's ministry? I was like, every Sunday, do you see men here? Yeah. Oh, we got a men's ministry. Oh, we need to have a men's Bible study. We need 45 retreats, whatever. I said, no, we don't. We need to teach men to be men and do whatever. Maybe we just need more margin. That's why we're so weary. The third thing is connection. And the last one is faith. And these go hand in hand. Connection is lack of quality, depth-filled, life-giving friendships. I was talking with a lady the other day. She said, man, my friend, she's been helping me and all stuff. It's awesome. And she said, we talk, and then, she listens, and then we ended up we went shopping, or we went on this activity. I said, whoa, let's back up. I said, so you talk, she listens. I said, what happens after that? She's like, oh, well, then we'll go do something. I said, does she ever say anything to you about the stuff? Well, no, she's there to listen. I was like, whoa, it's time out. That's a shopping friend. That's a listening friend. That's a commiserating friend. That's not an accountability friend. That's life-giving. And I'm not saying you don't need those people. You need the people that will shop with you. You need the people that just go, man, they're the foodie friend that just wants to take you to the new hip restaurant and go wherever. You need the friend that's going to be like, hey, man, let's go to the game. And like, oh, I already bought tickets. You're like, yay, let's go then. And you go, and you all these things. But you need somebody, and we say this all the time, and if you know it, say it with me, that love God and love you, but love God more than you. So they can say the things they need to. So I asked her, I said, well, what have you taught? I said, have you ever gossiped about anybody to your friend? Well, yeah. I said, what did they say? Well, nothing. I said, oh, okay, well, have you ever complained about your spouse to your friend and it was a behavior that maybe you needed to shift or change? They go, well, yeah, but, and I was like, they're not your accountability partner. They're just a friend that likes to listen and go shopping. That's not a depth-filled, life-giving friendship. It is life-giving, but it's life-giving on a very superficial level. Now, I'm not saying you need a friend that you sit down and you're parsing out verses in the Greek and doing all this stuff every time you gather together. But that you would have somebody that cares enough about you that sits down, like I have guys that I meet with, and we go through like 20-something questions that they have in advance, and they answer, and we talk about them. You know what the last question is? Have you lied to me during any time during our hangout? And I don't do that just to them. I have two people in my life who I fill that out. I send it to them. We video chat every week. And you know what they ask me at the end of the video chat? Have you lied to me about anything on this? Those are the kind of relationships that are life-giving. You want to know why you're weary? Maybe you're lacking sleep. Maybe you're lacking margin. Maybe you're lacking connection. And fourth, maybe you're lacking the connection in faith. And this just moves through lack of connection to God, church, and spiritual disciplines. I think they're pretty self-explanatory. Are you connecting daily reading your Bible? Are you praying and not just asking God to take away the hurt that's in your life? Because sometimes, even though God didn't cause the hurt, there's going to be hurtful situations that over time, and you'll look back in hindsight a year, 2, 3 years later, that you go, God, while you didn't cause that, and God, that breaks your heart, God, that is exactly what ended up forming me to the man and woman that I am today, God. While that still is hard and that still hurts, thank you that I am healed. But we end up being broken. All of these pieces, and these are spiritual pieces that leave us fractured. And this is where it ends up taking us in the long run if we're not careful. Weary people react in anger masquerading as strength. If you met, now you're processing this and you're looking at these pieces, margin, faith, connection, this rest, this movement and that, and you see weary people that they say they're strong. But as you start looking at these factors, you go, wait a second, there's something spiritually happening. And this may be happening in your life. And I'm not here to shame you. I needed these things pointed out to me because I needed to change. And I've helped other people point this out, and then they go, whoa, I had never thought about that. And so when you're going through a difficult time in your marriage, it is not the difficult time that is the factor in why you're handling it poorly. There's a good chance that your faith, your margin, your sleep, connection are fractured. And the byproduct of that is what's happening there. In your friendships, in your parenting. If you immediately scream at your children every time they do something, I don't blame you. No, just kidding. If you immediately scream at your children the moment that they do something, the chances are, if you and I were to sit down, that one or more of these would be. Now, I'm not saying it's not also because your kid is a tiny terror, okay? That may be the case. And if that's the case, never mind. We'll talk about discipline another day. And so there's a class for that this summer. But margin, faith, sleep, connection, that one of these is off in your life and you go, wait a second, I don't know if I can be gentle because I am off here. And they're exhausted and ill-prepared to move in the gentleness of God. Love the way that my prayer has been for you this whole series leading up to it. When it comes to gentleness, come out of these verses in Psalm chapter 23. If you have a Bible, you could turn over there. If you don't, it'll be here on the screen. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He makes me lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside still waters. He restores my soul. He leads me in paths of righteousness for his name's sake. Even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. Notice that's talking about correction there. These pieces of weariness, what do we look at? We look at the connection with God and faith. If we have no correction within our life, no wonder we don't see any movement. You prepare a table for me in the presence of my enemies. Imagine this. All your enemies are watching. God, you're so good and you protect me and you care for me. All my enemies get to watch as you throw me a party. You anoint my head with oil, my cup overflows. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of the Lord forever. There's three things that we learn from this prayer. That my hope for you is you combat the road of weariness to move towards God, to move out of the brokenness into the fruit that God has for you in gentleness. I limp along with you in this, but I'm learning. And the things that I'm learning are this, that the gentleness of God restores your and my soul. Over in verse 2 and verse 3, he restores my soul. He leads me in the paths of righteousness for his name's sake. You want to be restored? You feel tired? Connect with God. No, Jason, I need a nap. No, Jason, I need more hours in a day. Why is it you point back to the people that are going through a broken marriage, difficult kids, hard time at work, friendships and parents and interpersonal relationships are all like breaking apart, and they still have joy and they still have hope and they still find something, and you see those people and you go, why is it that they have those things? Because they look at what it means to follow Jesus. They go, you know what? I'm going to be still before him. I'm going to have margin in my life. I'm going to have connection and life-giving interactions, and I'm going to make sure my faith is the most important thing. That doesn't mean they don't encounter hardship. It means that they're prepared to move in patience, in love, in joy and gentleness, in spite of the hardship. That's why when we turn on the TV at the very end of the news that has been absolutely tumultuous, and they go, here's the highlight of the week for 30 seconds. And they name a person that even in the face of hurt and pain and whatever, and it's a happy story, we all go, ah. And all those things that we share on social media, those stories of hardship, and it doesn't put the person down. You can track back in almost every instance when it's a person of faith, that it's someone who is rooted strongly in what it means to get over these pieces and not sit in their circumstances, but sit in who God designed them to be. He restores your soul. Not only that, the gentleness of God comforts and protects you. This is why they talk about God in the Bible as the lion and the lamb. You can walk next door after this, and so those of you guys who are here, if you're on Facebook Live, you can't, but come hang out with us and you can see it. That they go next door and stand there and look at the sheep, and they'll do their thing, and they'll come over there, and all the kids think they're cute. Don't feed them Skittles, because that's dumb. And so, which we've had people do. They're like, here's a Cheeto sheep. No, don't do that. But you see the sheep, and it's gentle, and even when they haven't been sheared, you'll feel it, and it's like, man, it's nice and soft. And God has a gentle movement within him of love, grace, mercy. But there's a reason that they call God the lion and the lamb. Have you ever seen a lion? Google on YouTube when lions attack. Now, don't have little kids around because it's brutal. You see people that get these tattoos of, oh, God is my rock and he is the lion. And so I'm going to get a picture of a lion. And they get the tattoo of a lion. The lion looks like this. Next time, if you are going to get a tattoo of a lion, get that mouth open. I want blood everywhere. Because let's look at this. When he talks about protecting us, when you Google when lions attack, there is nothing pretty about it. And we don't need to whitewash the power and protection of God. When we follow him, even in his gentleness, he is going to protect you in a way unlike anything else. And I hear people say, oh God, and we talk about Jesus and his joy and his peace, whatever. The same Jesus that went to the cross in gentleness and peace is also the same Jesus that in righteousness flipped tables and got out a whip and drove people out of the temple when they were doing wrong. The gentleness of God comforts and protects. And it's a beautiful thing when that takes place. And finally, the gentleness of God is with you for a lifetime. And the only way that that happens is when you surrender and follow him. And I watch people do it all the time. They say, I want to give my life to God. I want to get baptized, and that's why we heat up this horse trough here. And people come and they surrender their life because we keep shorts and shirts and towels. The only thing that misses is you, and the only thing holding you back is the excuse of getting your life together. Which is the very reason that Jesus came, to give you life and life abundant, because you can't get your life together. It's why Jesus did it for you. And it's the power of the Holy Spirit, that comfort and protection that moves through your life and mine, that comes to a place that we can begin to be gentle even when we never thought we could be, because we walk through our circumstances, we go, there's no way I can be. And God goes, I know you're right. I know that it's very difficult for you to find joy and peace and patience and comfort in this faithfulness and this gentleness, but I can do it through your life if you will surrender to me. And when you do, it's with you for a lifetime. And I love the fact that that's a promise that we can count on. And if you've had a hard time with being gentle, you've struggled with thinking that it's somehow a form of weakness, gentleness is strength in action. My prayer is that you'll take action. Would you pray with me? Thanks for tuning in to the Forefront Church video podcast. Our hope and prayer is that this has left you encouraged and challenged you in your faith. And you might have some questions and some ways that you want to figure this out, and we want to help with that. Head over to forefrontchurch.info, and there's a couple different ways that you can connect. Click the Connect tab and let us know how we can be praying for you, or a staff member can be contacting you this week. Maybe you have just been encouraged by this and want to support the ministry here at Forefront Church. You can click the Giving tab
as well as other tabs that are in there to help you along in your journey with God. And so we're thankful for you. Thanks for tuning in. And we cannot wait to see you again here online on the video podcast. We love you, and we'll see you then.